JJ, welcome to the pod.
Oh, pleasure to have. I've been invited onto your podcast. You're doing great things. I can't wait to get down into it.
It's going to be exciting. You're building real world AI solutions. But can you help me explain a little bit more to our audience? What is it exactly that you're building and what triggered or what motivated you to build it?
Okay, so the company Genesis, so we are building an AI weapons detection, basically service, okay? Software as a service. And so the genesis of the whole company was the Parkland shooting back in 2019, 2018. So that what we discovered, basically without telling you the entire story, the co-founders go into schools on the East Coast and, having to deal with things like lockdown drills, right? So I know where I work, state of Texas, they mandate it. Now it's become mandated throughout, most of the country. That's all well and good, but what happens is desensitization of the protocol. And so it's exactly what happened in the Florida State, in the Parkland shooting. And so if you look at that, what happened was the cameras became, the investment in cameras became irrelevant. And this has happened in pretty much name a workplace or facility shooting that's happened, right? Any mass shooting. The cameras became irrelevant because they're not proactive. They are reactive. And so the Parkland shooting basically launched a mission for two of the co-founders, which, by the way, former Navy SEALs from my community, both very smart individuals. And so what the result was walking up to the school after 25 lockdown drills for their kids and saying, hey, what are you guys doing with these cameras? Standard answer was nothing, right? They're great for reactivity. We've got these high-speed Verkada or, Axis cameras, 1080p, 4K, doesn't really matter. Nobody's watching them or they're not producing anything that can prevent, right, a tragedy, then they're useless. And so they're great for who had the vape pen, who broke into the car last night, maybe who committed a murder outside. But again, all reactive, all forensic type stuff. So the genesis of this entire company of ZeroEyes was born from that. Let's take that investment that people made in cameras, and there's over 100 million in the continental US alone, right? Just camera streams writ large. And so let's take those camera streams and make them proactive, right? We look at ZeroEyes for first sight, not first shot. You don't have to install new cameras if you want to get into kind of the infrastructure of ZeroEyes. Yeah, so you don't have to go purchase new cameras. As long as they're IP cameras, 720p minimums, it's all we require for our algorithm to pick up a brandished weapon. Once those meet those minimum requirements, we platform on what you already have. It's not an all or nothing solution. You could have 1,000 cameras, maybe only 500 are critical entry points, crossover points, T-hallways, right? Get into the tactics of the whole thing. Nonetheless, you could platform a certain amount of cameras and ZeroEyes is always watching. So the algorithm will pick up a brandished gun, does not do concealed weapons. We get that question all the time. Once it picks up that gun, what changes is the human in the loop that we have. And if you want to discuss that, we could go into that right now.
Yeah. Well, I want to put a quick pause on that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the fact that you're leveraging already existing investments in ecosystems. So it's not like a net new expenditure. It's like a layer on top to like, hey, you have the equipment, let's actually make it useful. So I love that leverage point, especially from like entrepreneurship of figuring out what exists and how do we turn what exists into something net new that we couldn't do before. Let's dive into the human in the loop. Where does the human play a loop? Why can't we just trust the AI agent to do it all by itself?
We could talk hours about AI on its own. Nothing wrong with having a human in the loop. In fact, I just got done watching a webinar with my old boss, Bill McCraven, the make your bed guy. So former chancellor of UT for 3 or 4 years there. And also the commander who led the Operation Neptune Spear to catch bin Laden. So he was my boss twice. We've come across paths. He was just on a webinar with Morgan Stanley and was talking about autonomous, I'm going way off subject here, but he was talking about autonomous type warfare, right? Which is where ultimately we're headed. We already have UAVs, I already have drones, right, that are capable of 50-fold of what, when I retired in 2017, 50-fold since then, right? So that we're talking about 9 years, right? Talking about UAVs, underwater unmanned vehicles as well. The entire combat theater is about to change. It's changing right before our eyes. And so he actually mentioned at the very end of his webinar, which was 10 o'clock this morning, we still need that human decision maker to make decisions for these autonomous type warfare vehicles. Made complete sense. And I was like, wow, that's exactly what ZeroEyes case is. So we have our own 365, 24/7 operation center. We call it the ZOC, the ZeroEyes Operation Center, right? Where with these detections, when they get picked up in 3 to 5 seconds, go to our operation center. We have 2 of them, one in Hawaii, one in Philadelphia for the redundancy and the crossover of time. And so that image, that detection image that comes in, actually the AI picks up 5 frames before and 5 frames after that photo goes to the operation center. That allows them to enhance it, rotate it in different ways and structures and angles. They can make sure that it is verified by a human that it is a weapon. You have to be former law enforcement, former military to work in that ZOC. That's the reason why. And so they'll get about 3 to 5 seconds to enhance that. This is a real threat. We'll dispatch. We pick up the phone, call 911, and we call the client. So AI does its job with the detection where it never sleeps, right? Never, ZeroEyes takes no days off, no bias. It picks up that gun shape. The human in the loop is the one that keeps the false positives. I'm sure you've heard some stories maybe in this gun detection world that we're in of some quote unquote competitors of ours who have launched on Dorito bags or potato chip bags or something that wasn't at all a gun shape, but the AI was left to its own device to make that call for the client. And this is one of the banes of our existence here at ZeroEyes is, look, that's the last thing you need, especially at a university, higher ed, school system, and a corporation, quite frankly. Like,
like a healthcare, like a
yeah.
hospital
If you're
facility.
at a big bank, one of the top 5, we have some clients there. Last thing you need is false positives going off all day, because what happens? You become desensitized to the protocol and then you stop looking at it. It's like my Nest camera at home, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. A few things here that I want to parallel so like the audience can take away is that you're leveraging the technology to do the things that it's really difficult. I mean, to hire humans to see all cameras 24/7 and then detect, it's very difficult, but you take those detections to the human in the loop to make the final judgment call. And I wrote a piece recently around just like selling, because everything's going to be changing around this economy in terms of what we sell, how we do what we do, even like white collar work and like services work, is that the doing is going to be automated or leveraged with agents, but the stuff that is uniquely human, the judgment calls, the trust in the relationship building, the trusting of a protocol, actually believing that this protocol is important to follow, that's not going to be replaced. So one, I want to highlight that this is a strategic vision, because you have obviously a vision around what the company needs to be that I think is important to highlight versus competitors who say, hey, no, we can just agentify it and it'll get good enough later. So that's a strategic hinge because you have a belief on the future and you're betting on that belief, making the strategic thing. Because you work with law enforcement and military, tell me about the culture, because there is a set of belief in people that you're going to attract to work with you and to believe in the mission, even your clients that you work with. Like, how has your experience in the SEALs and your experience, like the team that you're attracting, influencing culture and influencing your strategy?
A baseline answer to your question is purpose, right? So when you get a bunch of special operations guys, and there's a bunch of SEALs, I'm one of them. We've got about 6 or 7 that are actual AEs out pushing this stuff, right? So we don't even like to call them sales guys, because it's not even a selling technique. These guys walk in there with purpose, okay? And the purpose is, in the teams, the baseline for a great special operator, what brings somebody to those communities, is doing something greater than yourself. That's number one. That purpose right there drives the right people culture-wise to the company. When you get that, you're not just out there selling a product so that you can pay off your Range Rover or whatever. You're not becoming an AE to do that type of stuff. Becoming an AE because you really want schools protected, right? Because your life after service, you believe in that mission. Core principle, right? This is why companies fall apart when they grow and they expand. Culture gets kind of diluted over time. They all start with great intent, and I believe most of them start with a purpose that's mission driven, but then they lose focus on the mission, and more importantly, they lose focus on the vision. Right? Those two key things coming from the military are critical to align people to get into the right mode and to follow what the intent of the company is. If you can't define your vision as a leader, one of our co-founders, they can't define the vision, and there's going to be collapse. People don't know what they're working for at some time. And as you grow and expand and scale, you lose sight of what the original mission was because you don't have a vision for the future, right? The vision for the future is it's pretty simple, right? The vision for this company would be to get every camera in America on platform with ZeroEyes, baseline. Okay, then you're protected at that level. Then we grow from there. Do we do cameras, right? The innovation starts happening. We've already thinking about some
you
of these
built your own
things.
ecosystem.
Right. You built your
You
own
can own the stack.
ecosystem and go. But that's the vision. Right now, the mission is to get everybody protected. I often do these podcasts, and the first question is, why do we not have this in every school system?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Well, they fight at Capitol Hill, and they have been for the last 4 decades about when a gun incident happens. As you know, nothing ever happens. It gets caught up in the swamp, and then
unfortunate.
Nothing happens. There is protocol out there today that is very effective. Look to get a gun at first sight, not first shot. That alone should get you in the school, right? Base funding. Until something better comes along, there is something that, and it's not going to, and yet we had another shooting, in Pawtucket just the other day at a hockey game, right? Guy walks in, pulls a gun out, shoots his family. Like, you can't make this up. And so, yeah, I guess getting blanket funding, but the culture is super important when you're selling these things because now everybody's racing to the AI space. It's just a race to the top. Now, okay, gun detection, you got a camera company. I'm not going to call any of them out by name, but they know who they are. And they know they can't compete at scale with the Operation Center, which is a critical piece. It's really, if I go head to head with a competitor that says they do gun detection, I haven't lost yet because once I pitch the ZOC and describe what its purpose is.
Because you're building the back-end infrastructure with that, so it's very hard to build that.
You can't be beat, right? You can't. It just can't be beat. And
that's
when you have the culture behind it,
the culture belief is part. I mean, that's frankly why I wanted you on the pod. Like, I get pitched so many times for the podcast, and then when I saw your email, like, dude, this is honest. This is legit work.
Yeah, it's authentic. I mean, it's genuine. There's no way around it. So my job is to not talk them out of other stuff. You know, you've got gun detection, shot detection, right? You've heard of that. Well, that's already in the few years that AI has been an analytic on a camera. In those few years, gunshot detection, it's kind of outdated. I don't say anything negative about it. I just give you, hey, look, that's also after first shot, right? A gun has to be fired for your gun detection to work. That's not a good scenario as it is. So right off the bat, our AI gun detection beats that, right? We want it first sight, not first shot. Can't guarantee it, but that's what we look for. The next thing is, I have to talk people off the ledge on all these analytics. So the race to the space is, well, we can imagine you being a superintendent for a very big school district in the state of Texas, let's just say. And you're getting pitched, hey, I can give you behavioral analytics, right? And we can tell if these kids are going to get in a fight. And the more you stack on to a superintendent's job or maybe safety and security at one of these big institutions, the more noise you're going to get, right? So you're not going to be able to respond. If you're looking at a phone, maybe all these analytics only go one place. When you're roaming, you're going to your phone and you're going, oh, I don't know what's going on here. And it's just, you got to, this is the second part, is I have to head off the shiny objects in the room because we can do analytic. We have the AI tech guys that can run an analytic and say, okay, we're going to profile this. It's not where you've got to slow down, right? And so you've got to have a base solution using AI properly that actually has a binary result that you can react on. The guessing game of all those analytics. Right.
Yeah, because that data collection would require, it's almost a completely different business model too. Larger database, larger algorithms to suss out the analytics and to suss out the behaviors. And then from there, what do you do with those analytics? Like, can you act on them? Can you prevent that? So your main focus is, let's solve one problem. Let's do it well. And the belief and the culture that you're building is one of the differential, but also building the back end office of the ZOC. Like, that is like the major value prop. What have been some of the struggles to get this into school systems or into organizations? Like, what are you currently working through?
So I won't even talk about the main struggle yet. It's kind of obvious, but to go to your point, what we just talked about, one of the struggles is these shiny analytics. Imagine somebody beating me to a superintendent's office and they have limited budget, which plays to the other real constraint of our business. They have a limited budget, but they get there first and the superintendent says, oh, I'd love to know if the kids are getting in a fight in the hallway. Really, what's more important? What's more devastating blow to an organization than a mass shooting? Right. It seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But the shiny objects beat us to the punch sometimes. We just don't have enough boots on the ground that, oh, we just purchased, behavioral analytic for, science class. And then you're looking and that drains their $30,000 budget, which leads to number two. The biggest bane of our existence right now is budgeting. So you break it down into the SLED market, right? Schools, higher ed, they're all limited in budget. At least they tell you. And they are. Depending on what state you're in, most states
Depends who
are
you're
in
talking
deficits.
to, right?
Yeah,
Because they
well,
don't have an endowment. Yeah.
most of them are. We have huge success. So I haven't done a demo yet or had a conversation with folks, police departments, municipals, you name it, higher ed, where I've been in front of them and they said, we don't need this product. Not once. And I've been doing this over a year now. And so hundreds of demos. It always comes down to cost. And so sadly, priorities are mandated either by the state government or by the school system themselves. They've got a rack and stack. And for some reason, this never goes to the top. Now, where I have success, when money is not an object, obviously, which is not the case for even a corporation, big corporation. When money is not an object, and I say that, let's say they applied for a bond and put some kind of AI weapons detection in there or some kind of security protocol in it, drop of the hat. They're purchasing this because they know how important it is. Done, no problem. But getting bonds, not everybody wants a bond. It's a tax increase for the local population, right? So there's all kinds of debates for that. It's grant funding, not enough grant money out there, and it's very competitive. Learned a lot about that
Have you thought
system.
about like which partner would make them? I mean, this is brainstorming out loud. We can cut this if we have to, but have you ever thought about working with partners or other institutions that it's in their incentive to have you there and have them pay for it? So it's almost like at a net zero or a lower cost for the end client.
Yeah, so we have a couple relationships that way. Unfortunately, it's not broad enough. They're very, very narrow scoped.
Interesting. Because I was thinking like
biggest,
insurances too, like who pay when a
right.
I mean, this is a difficult subject, but when a catastrophe happens, who pays for that? And if we're able to eliminate that, who benefits from? Obviously, it's an obvious thing. Society would benefit from it, but sometimes we have to think in these stupid mazes of like who's going to pay for it. If it like, you know what I mean? But if who pays for that, who benefits for that, and if you were to be a supplier for them, where the net cost is lower for the institution or the organization or the school, that would be an interesting in. And this is not like I'm one of my guys that's doing something similar, but it's a different space. It's definitely not in the AI and gun detection, but they're having a larger organization pretty much offset the cost of their services. So when they go to a client, they say, hey, would you like us to provide this service pretty much and pay you to do it, not get paid to do it? Is there anything like that in your space?
So I should throw you into a board meeting at ZeroEyes because that's exactly what we started last year. Okay. We've got an insurance company on board for that very reason. Lower the cost for the end user. Insurance backs it up, and then liabilities covered on that end, and it's a much reduced cost for the end user. So that is ongoing. You nailed it right on the head. Not up full swing yet, and we're not advertising it. Hopefully this year, but that will be a big incentive, I think, for higher ed especially, right? Considering what happened at Florida State. Because it's a no-brainer.
Like your thing adds a net positive to society. Very few products add an overarching like life benefit to society.
Correct.
I mean, let's be real.
Yep. Nope. You nailed it. Nailed it right on the head. What is successful and what has been successful, and we can't seem to get all 50 states to fall, is we've gotten a few states out there. I think Utah was one of them. Kansas is a current one where they actually got, and it takes our government team to do this, and we're limited in their numbers. Those guys work their tails off. But what happens is if you get state blanket funding, the wording is right? Always comes down to competition, free market, got it. But if the words are correct and the system is out there and you've sold, a state on it, they can provide blanket funding. Then you see an entire state drop like flies. It may be a limited time. Maybe it's a year. Maybe they can only afford 2 years. But when that pot of money is there, you'd be surprised at what happens. Kansas is, and they're getting protected with the long goal.
And that gives you runway too to innovate, to figure out how can we,
there it is. How can we get the funding? Right.
Yeah. Or even just stay longer too. Like how do we, I mean, you would reinvest in R&D of not just product delivery, but how do you effectively get the stickiness so that you're there,
right? And
the cost isn't prohibitive for that,
right?
Not just finding who else can pay for this,
right?
That's pretty cool, man.
Which is often the case, Yeah, that's good
Yeah.
stuff.
I want to close. Let's shifting gears here. I mean, you have with your military career, you mentioned that, and I think this could be like synonymous to why you're working on ZeroEyes, but hesitation and unclear information being like something that does cost lives. Can you share more about your experience there and how that parallels to the work you're doing here?
Yeah. So the talk always is, and I use Florida State as an example, only because, they decided to protect themselves after their second shooting in 10 years, right? A lot of people don't realize they had two shootings on their campus, not meaning to call them out. They had other priorities, but they're an after the fact, right? So hesitation was a killer for them. They knew the
Mm.
technology was there. Looking back, they knew it could have solved their problem. They could have prevented a huge tragedy. And when I say huge tragedy, one loss of life is a huge tragedy for me, right?
Yeah.
Same in the
Yeah.
SEAL teams. Unfortunately, along the way, I've lost more than 24 people that weren't just
Mm.
teammates, but for friends, right? So that's not normal in a lifetime. Hesitation was always not the cause in the military world. It's rushing into the gunfight, which was usually the cause of mass casualty at least in the SEAL teams. But you look to prevent that with risk management in the commercial world. And
Mm.
so you mitigate that by trying to convince everybody it's not if, it's when. And it sounds like a tagline, but at the end of the day, that is the case. These things pop up just in the random. I mean, just look at the last year, Brown University. Now you got up there in Pawtucket, Rhode Island
Yeah,
with
you're
the
hitting on a
shooting.
societal issue, like a
Oh,
societal
God.
issue of like what's
It's
going on with
just,
society and how we're thinking about
like
this. Like, why is this happening
the
more?
trends
Yeah.
are there, right? Just
Yeah.
like when we get signals, there's always high load signals. We call them high load signals when we know that an attack is going to happen based in Iraq,
Mm.
maybe Afghanistan, didn't matter. There's all kinds of signal intelligence that starts to pick up right before an actual thing. You have to pay attention to that data. Now
Mm.
that we have ZeroEyes expanding across the country, some of those signals are clearly there. And here's an example. 2023, we had about 500. This is 4 years after the company started. We had about 500 true positive detections. That's real guns picked up, identified by the ZOC, and alerted the client. Okay, 500. 2020, as we expanded, as the word got out, and we're expanding in the Northeast, Texas, big one, we had 1,500 in 2024, right? True
Mm.
positives, not false positive, true positive detections every day. And you could see part of this is scale. There's more cameras now. We're catching detections that would never be, you wouldn't know about. Last
Mhm.
year, we had over 2,500 true
Wow.
positive. So the data is
That's
that
pretty exponential. Yeah.
my point is the signals are there. And we all know that these are causing part of the problem,
Mhm.
radicalizing these kids, Instagram fame, Snapchat fame.
Yeah.
I've got a slide I could show you of a school system in New Mexico where our AI was already deployed there. Luckily, this girl was part of a bring a real gun to school TikTok challenge. You cannot make
Wow.
this up. She thought that was a great idea. I'm going to do exactly that. Bring my dad's, but she did. She put a pistol. The girl was across from her her girlfriend was doing the TikTok dance or whatever it was for her 5 minutes of fame. But in a minute and a half, police responded based off of our detection and were able to apprehend you. You could imagine how that could turn bad in any bad scenario, like just in a
Yeah.
bad
No.
scene or a bad school. Yeah, it's you can't make it up. Every time I demo that, I can't help but chuckle. But that's what's happening.
Yeah.
That's what's happening with the mines. That's where these guys get manifestos are getting produced online. You've seen it all. So
Yeah. 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 We don't need to dive into that. We have seen it, but JJ,
yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that experience and sharing also what you're doing for this. For our listeners out there, where's the best place for people to, one, thank you for being on, and two, learn more about ZeroEyes and your work?
Yeah, ZeroEyes.com has a ton of information on it. Just go to the website. It's pretty simple, ZeroEyes.com. If you want to get in touch with me, you can hit me on LinkedIn. Also, Fourth Phase Podcast on Instagram. That's my wife and I's podcast, which talks about a lot of the things we talked about in the background here: leadership, battlefield leadership, connection, all the stuff that ties into building a good culture, basically. But yeah, you can reach us on the socials there. And yeah, really appreciate you having me on, spreading the word.
I'd love to have it, man. Well, I'll put those links in the show notes. JJ, thanks again, man.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to get more of these podcasts, please go ahead and subscribe to wherever you're watching or listening to the pod. If you have any suggestions or questions that you want me to answer on the pod, or you have a guest that you want me to interview, please go ahead and email me all of your suggestions and questions at podcast@dogoodwork.io. That's podcast@dogoodwork.io. If you'd like to give me public feedback, you can go on Apple Podcasts, and from there you can leave up to a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate that. If you like more free resources where you can get my best strategies to help you increase your company's performance and scale profitably, you can get hand-picked articles to propel your growth, and you can get trainings and discussions that I give freely online, as well as low-cost resources such as my books and guides. You can get all of that by going to dogood.io/resources. 90% of all of these resources are not behind any email opt-in, so you can get instant access by going to dogoodwork.io/resources. Now, if you'd like to accelerate your progress and shorten the gap between information and action and start seeing results in your business, let's work together to increase your company's performance and scale profitably and serve more clients without the overwhelm. You can request a free clarity call to see how we can best support you to reach your goals by going to dogoodwork.io/apply. Again, that's dogoodwork.io/apply. As always, it's an honor to be a small part in your journey. This is Raul Hernandez. Do good work.